Hello and good afternoon or good morning or good evening or good whatever time you're joining me. I'm Sandra Pollock, the founder of the Women's Awards, and for International Women's Day I have been speaking to a few of my friends, both male and female, to find out what International Women's Day means for them. Now, yes, today is Tuesday, Tuesday the 9th of March 2021, so the day after this year's official International Women's Day. But you know what? There are events going on all over the week and in some cases all over the month. So maybe it will become International Women's Month. We never know. But in terms of what I do, the Women's Awards and the other work that I do, we celebrate what women are up to all across the year. So make sure that you visit our website, www.thewomens'awards.com, and find out what we're doing. Now, I know you've noticed I've got another guest joining me today to talk about that question. What does International Women's Day mean to you? And my friend, sitting in the studio with me is Simon Cater. Simon is a leadership and management development consultant. We met quite a few years ago, didn't we, Simon? Welcome.
Yes, we did. Yes, Croatia, I believe it was.
Yes. Yeah, we went to, was it UKTI?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, yeah.
Yes, and we were amongst a group of people that went over to Croatia, which was an amazing experience. And I've still got loads of friends from that group, actually. So, yeah, so that's good. So, Simon, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. Couldn't quite fit you into yesterday, but you were persistent and we are here today. So that question, what does International Women's Day mean to you? Yeah, what does it mean to you?
Okay, I think it's an important event now for actually recognising the role that women play. I think, certainly in my career, women have tended to, whilst I've probably worked for more women managers than anybody else, I would say that historically there's always been a ceiling. People seem to reach a certain level and then the males take over again. I think it's important to actually recognise that I think in many respects women have more abilities, more empathy than males do.
It's quite interesting to hear, a guy actually recognize that ceiling, because sometimes we women don't hear that. We don't. I'll be honest, I've never really heard a guy honestly say, sometimes there seems to be a ceiling and then the guys take over. Why do you think that might happen?
Whether it's stereotypes, I think maybe that. I think particularly where I live now in Suffolk, it's a little bit not behind the times quite compared to perhaps London and places like that, but there does seem to be a very old-fashioned approach that the women's role is very much, well, look after the home, look after the family, and yes, if you want to go out for work, that's fine, but don't let it impede.
Yeah, we're looking after the home and looking after the family. You still got to do those things.
That's it.
Yeah, and actually, I don't think that's only the case in Suffolk. Culturally, the UK is mixed culturally, and a lot of different cultural groups. You'd be surprised where that is still the case.
Yes. Yeah.
Even here in the 21st century, there are many women of all ages that are still experiencing that. If in some cases they are allowed to go out to work. Yeah. And the other thing I like that you mentioned was, the different skills that women bring. And if we look across the world now, we're realizing that some of those skills are more the empathy and that sort of stuff. What difference does that make, do you think, in things like, leadership and team building, management?
I think it's by having that extra degree of empathy, I think people a woman perhaps as a manager can see where the the sort of the team members coming from, perhaps understand, put themselves in their shoes. Whereas I found quite often with sort of a more senior male manager, it's almost seen as a competition or a threat. No, it's either do as I tell you or bear the consequences.
Yeah. And we work in a similar field, and I know that one of the things that I say to people, because guys will tend to, you're right, if we question, why or what or how, it'll take that personally, you're questioning me. Whereas it isn't always seen as an attack on a person's role. So one of the things you've learned from in addition to those things, from having had, as you mentioned, probably more female managers or leaders in your career?
Better communication.
Talk to me about that. What do you mean by better communication?
Well, I suppose it links into more approachable as well. If I think back, perhaps to my initial career was in the civil service, and I think that the women who managed me then actually were more inclined to show an interest in you as a person. You weren't just that person doing that job. I can't think of it, or only think of one male I worked for who actually did show interest in you as a person, and he would be the one manager that I did feel stood out amongst the rest. I have worked through colleges as well, as an associate sort of lecturer, and again there I probably worked for more women than men, and again it was just a much more relaxed, less confrontational way of working.
And again, it's wonderful that you mentioned that, because a lot of my work, setting up women's groups and networks, I find that some guys, they're predominantly focused on women support and development, but you get some guys that they sneak in there, they want to come, and when I've said, well, why, it is that exactly what you've just said, less competitiveness in terms of approach and environment and attitude and that sort of thing. Yeah.
One thing I probably would want to add as well is that I have actually experienced the reverse, and maybe it's because of the need to succeed in a difficult, challenging environment. I have had one female manager who would obviously remain nameless, who I found very difficult to get on with, always very confrontational, and always seemed to be sort of, you almost felt you were a stepping stone for them to get where they wanted to get. So there obviously was a downside as well sometimes, perhaps, whether that's just as a result of the environment that's caused it.
Or I've experienced that. I mean, two particular women come to mind, both neither of which I shall name at this point in time, but and I think because they feel as though they've had to fight so hard to get to where they currently were, that they couldn't let up. It's almost like they'd lost that ability to trust, and that sort of thing. So that's interesting. So the other thing that you mentioned before we came on air was that, because I said, do you have any daughters? You said, you have how many sons?
4.
4 sons.
4 boys, yes.
So okay, so this living in your home life, what would be a predominantly male environment, how have you, or how would you approach this whole gender equality issue?
It's a difficult one, that one, because I've been so used to it for so long. It's not something I've really thought about. I suppose more from my wife's perspective, I think she's found it quite challenging, because it's been, I suppose, over the years when the boys were all at home, it was a very sort of testosterone-filled house. And we had 2 male dogs as well. And, there was no let out to it. I don't know. For me, I think it suited me because most of us are of a similar mindset. Certainly, two of the boys are as OCD as I am, so that we formed a little sort of band in that respect, sort of thing. I don't know. It's hard. I can't really put it into words.
No, that's absolutely fine. That's fine. So we talked about some of the pluses that women bring, that are different in a lot of cases. And we know that there's a generalization, but there have been lots of research done to differentiate the things that women bring more naturally: empathy and listening and communication and team building and developing that interest to develop other people. In your career, and you sort of slightly touched on this, but what are some of the challenges that you've seen women go through?
I'll think briefly about that one.
Because you talked about, a clear ceiling that women tend to reach. I mean, and some of that may be through choice, but sometimes it isn't.
I think there's sometimes sort of a preconceived expectation that a woman's priorities are elsewhere. No, you're not here purely and simply for the job, for your career. No, it's almost like it's not quite a fill-in, but no, if a child's ill, there's always that expectation that the woman will take time off work to go and look after the child, whereas the bloke's got to stay at work. And I think we probably did the same. So
that's one of the things there, that in terms of opportunity, that is that unconscious bias, in a way. That
are they fully committed to the organization?
And what's your answer to that from your experience? Do you think women are less committed? And again, this is certainly a generalization, but
I would suspect that is an approach that a number take, but whether that's the approach that they take because of a personal choice, or whether that's the choice that's taken because of expectation that is what should happen, society's norms and that sort of thing, I don't know. I mean, my wife would probably correct me, but I'd like to think that we've always tried to have a fairly balanced approach. Like with the kids when they were smaller, that one of us would always go to work early, the other would drop the children off, and the other would come home early and pick the children up. It wasn't a one-way street sort of thing.
So balanced parenting, really. And the difficulty is that sometimes that's not possible, because the working environment doesn't always allow that flexibility. So looking forward, what would you like to see in terms of gender parity, in the future, if you had a wand that you could
right, yes, that magic wand. I think what I'd like to see is people being treated on their merit, and rewarded for that, rather than having this sort of, the trouble is we put people in little boxes, and once they're in a box, the lid's been shut, then we're not going to take them out. Even for perhaps where women have made career choices to, like my wife did, she started off in the civil service, went reasonably high, but then when we had a family, she sort of put things on a back burner for a little bit. Once the children had grown up and sort of weren't quite so dependent on us, then she's come back and resurrected her career. So, but I don't think that's always accepted. I think once you've taken your eye off the ball, the things, well, you've lost interest now, so we don't need to worry about you anymore.
So it would be absolutely great if that sort of attitude could be changed, because then you are letting more skills, abilities, innovation, creativity back into the working environment.
Definitely.
Simon, it's been very interesting talking to you today. We haven't chatted like this in ages, so it was wonderful when you reached out to get involved with this.
I think the last one was sitting in a
Yes.
bar on a veranda looking over the Adriatic, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I was telling somebody about that. I think only this morning I was talking about, going to Croatia, and the different experiences that we had there. And one of the things that that I will never forget is how much the whole group supported each other during that trip. That was lovely. Yeah.
Again, that's a perfect example, isn't it? Where it doesn't matter who you are, what level you're at, male or female, we're all in a totally different environment, out of our comfort zones.
Yeah.
And I did several trips after that to Bulgaria, Romania, and places like that, and it was the same.
Yeah.
The support was there regardless of who you were.
Yeah, that was wonderful. If only we can bring that home and keep it going for absolutely everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
so,
a good trip, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. When we go away, we recognize that we belong together. That's quite funny. So thank you. Or you're going to say something else? You're very, very welcome.
Yeah,
very welcome indeed. And I just want to remind our listeners that and our watchers here that the Women's Awards nominations are open. So go ahead and nominate. And if you have been to our website, then you will know that there is some news out. A press release has been sent out there. Check our website, because we have launched 2 new categories, and I will leave you in suspense so that you will go and have a look at our website. There it is, www.thewomensAwards.com. I'm Sandra Pollock, and thank you again to my guest Simon Chater for joining me for our discussions on International Women's Day and what it means for you. So check with our social media streams to find out what's going on, and we will see you again soon. Thank you. Bye for now. Bye.
Bye-bye.